Well, 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 it is finally over, but what a ride it has been. Welcome back to the VikingGnomeAnime, the anime channel with only the most based takes on the internet. Today we are looking over episode 12, the final episode of Sweet Reincarnation for season 1. And, well, I was expecting a somewhat different ending, but I suppose having a more positive and heartwarming ending is also very acceptable. To start off with here, I do like how they show the Tutorute house lord basically being not necessarily afraid, but showing a lot of, let's say, respect for, like, the Mortland house and the father, Casserole, right? As when enemy camp hears that, what, Casserole, or like the house Mortland has gotten involved? Oh no. Harkening back to that knowledge that we got earlier in the show that his father, Casserole, is a war hero, right? He's a veteran, he's like a very skilled fighter, and I do like how they sort of kept that consistent, right? With this Tutorute lord also sort of reinforcing that. Anyways, the war ends. Well, they pull back since they couldn't kill Squale because he gets saved by Pastry and his father and some retainers. And then we get into an aspect of the episode I thought was surprising, but still well done overall. So we see Squale coming back, and he is really burdened by what he has just been through. Not only, I assume, because of his own trauma, being in war, being in battle for the first time, I am sure it can be quite traumatizing in itself, but for him, what really bothers him, and what really eats at him, is this burden of responsibility that he got so many, almost all of the men under his command, killed. And that, of course, is something that would eat away at any man a lot, right? Feeling that burden that you made the wrong decision, that you could have done something different to save all those lives, and that your potential incompetence or potential inexperience, this being your first sort of campaign or military adventure, resulting in so many dead people under your command, is hard to take. And very few shows really battle with this concept. Very few shows actually explore this concept, especially an isekai show like this. I do not expect that at all. But it is very welcome, because we, again, very rarely get to see these sort of sides to battle and warfare. And they really just keep hammering it home through most of the episode, just how really affected Squale is from this engagement. And that, he feels such a heavy burden of responsibility that in his first campaign, he made such mistakes, or at least he feels some mistakes, and that he failed, right? And that sort of sense of failure, it's like, I could have done so much different, I'm really bad, I'm incompetent, I'm stupid, etc, etc, etc. And that sense of failure really just pushing him down, making him just want to give up, be locked in his room, and not really engage with the world anymore, right? Of course, Pastry does remedy this by making some desserts, because that's what it does. But I also actually quite liked how they made the sweet making and the dessert making actually once again, a relevant point. As they've been doing throughout the show, they keep making the sweets a relevant part of the show with the plot, not just having it be superfluous, which is good. So he makes this tart tatin, the dessert there, which is quite good, by the way. You should have it if you haven't already. And he explains as Squale is eating it, and of course he thinks it's delicious, but then he explains that, these people made this dessert by failing. The only way this dessert got made was because these people failed, but persisted and kept going, and eventually found success. And if not for the failure, they would not have made this wonderful dessert, right? And of course, that paralleling to his own situation that, yes, he had his first command, yes, he might have failed, but you are not a failure unless you let the failure define you. Every person in life will fail. You will always see and feel failure time and again. It's inevitable. But it is how you deal with failure. It is how you overcome failure. It is how you grow from failure. That is the important part. You become stronger from it, wiser, and you see another day to become a better man from the failures you experience. Again, there is nothing wrong with failure, only from allowing it to defeat you and allowing it to stop you in your tracks. And I think Squale also realizes this when Pastry, of course, talks about this and draws parallels. And I think also that Squale might realize, or at least from my view, realizes that if I let this be the end of me, if I let this get to me, and I sort of roll in this failure and this feeling of defeat, I'm doing a disservice to the men that sacrificed their lives to protect me. Like, I must become someone better. I must aspire to be someone better. So so that their sacrifice will not be in vain. They might not spell that out in the show, per se, but I feel like that is a reasonable take of what Squall thinks and what is going through his mind at this point in time in the episode. And again, I think that is a very nice message, and it was fairly well done, and I liked how they made that come to be. But yes, as I said, the war ended quite quickly. I guess the House of Tuturute just pulled back to their own borders pending some new plan, but basically they were defeated, per now anyway. And then it's like, that's the end of the conflict. And they just go back home. Pastry gets his wine-making tool to squeeze the sugarcane-esque thing to get sweet sugar-esque soup or syrup for later. And then we end the episode and the season with a montage of Pastry just making sweets for licorice and all that sweetie, cute stuff. Which again, it's like, yeah, it's okay, it's fine. It's an okay sort of positive ending to season 1, with things being in a neutral and happy place, per se. So I will make a dedicated season 1 review, so I will not go too much into things in this episode review, but as a sort of general thoughts on season 1, I will say that this show surprised me in some ways. Like, I really didn't expect to like it much. I thought it was going to be quite gimmicky, but the more they went away from the pure sweet-making aspect, and the more they went into the nation-building aspects, the geopolitics, the power plays, and all these things, and the world-building, I got more and more interested. And I think they did those aspects fairly well, like better than most isekai do, and most anime do in general even, building out these worlds. So I did overall enjoy that. Again, but also harking back to what I said earlier in the review, that even though sweets are, let's say, a staple of this show, and you can't really get away from it, they weave the sweet making and that whole gimmick fairly well into plot points. For example, with the candy making for Count Retes in episode 8 or whatever, episode 9, episode 10, and how that affects the rest of the plot, right? And of course now in episode 12 with the sweets and the failure and the parallels there with Squall and his difficulties, they overall fairly well melted the sweets, so to speak, with the plot, and made it not feel superfluous, but feel more of a cohesive unit. And while, again, I have said before, the sweet aspect is the weakest part of the anime for me, since the other aspects I really quite enjoy, the nation-building aspect especially, it felt fairly entertaining and fun to watch, just based on that. I will say, yes, there are some issues I have with some specific actions in the show, like how there seems to have been no real consequences from Pastry basically practically just blackmailing the Duke when he figured out the plot with the kidnapping and such. And even though he is technically family now, because he's in the same family as his grandson, still, I would have expected some consequences, but I guess since he's a political player like that, he just let it go. But I was kind of expecting more from that, and I'm not sure how exactly he just sort of ended up squaring himself up for that. I would have expected at least a few commentaries of why he didn't go after Pastry after that, or why he didn't seek revenge or anything of that sort after he was blackmailed, right? Also, for example, one scene from very early on, episode 1, episode 2, where the priest, as if you remember, said in the end of the episode, like, it wasn't paid enough to keep this secret. There hasn't been any payoff from that so far as I know, that others have gotten to know his powers, you know? So, yeah, not quite sure what they're going to do with that, if they're ever going to pay that off or not. And of course, also some other scenes, for example, the very nonsensical, like, a strategy to keep people from being kidnapped, or the engagement to getting out, episode 6 or 7 or whatever it was, where everyone knew about the engagement anyway when they got to the capital, so it was nonsensical anyway, but the whole strategy itself was also just dumb. Like, there are moments like that in the show where I'm like, okay, this is kind of stupid. But overall, again, even for these small things I didn't really like, or that I can find criticisms with, the whole package, all in all, I think was fairly enjoyable. And it's not a great show. It might not even be a good show for many, based on their standards, but it is a very fine show with many good aspects to it. That being said, I would not at all mind a season 2. I think a season 2 could be quite fun. So hopefully, sometime, some way, we get a season 2. That being said, what do you think of the episode? Like it, hate it, whatever else, leave those comments down below. And do please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff to support this new channel. I deeply appreciate that. I will be making a season 1 review of Sweet Reincarnation in the next day or two, so keep your eyes out for that one. That being said, I hope you have a good day, keep watching anime, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.